Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's Life Sciences lesson. My name is Sina Sekheche, and this lesson is brought to you by the Free State Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Right, so today in Life Sciences lesson, we are going to learn about the life processes in plants and in animals. That is the main knowledge area. However, the topic that we'll be discussing is responding to the environment by humans, with the main focus on the human nervous system. So let's go. Before you start any topic, you must know. You must consult your exam guideline. If you are not in possession of this document, please make sure that your teacher gives you one. Each and every grade 12 learner is supposed to have an examination guideline for 2021. Why? Because this document is going to give you the scope, is going to give you all the topics that you need to cover and how much you need to cover for those topics. So let us check for today's topics, what does the exam guideline say we must cover? Firstly, we are going to look at the introduction of the topic. What is the topic of the day? The nervous system. The nervous system and the endocrine system are the ones that helps humans to respond to the environment. So we're going to look at how these two systems enables humans to respond to the environment. Then you're going to look at the entire human nervous system. But what are the things that you need to look out for or that you must check yourself against if you do know them? Firstly, you must check if you know that what is the need for a nervous system in humans. Then, how do humans react to stimuli, whether it is external or internal? You must be able to know how humans respond. Then you must also know the coordination of the various activities in the body. How are the various activities coordinated in the body? If you know all this one bullet with these sub-bullets, then you can say you have covered this topic. That's how you check yourself against the exam guideline. That is how you use the exam guideline. Then, again, we need to check at the central nervous system. What is it that we need to look out for on the central nervous system? We need to look at the brain and the spinal cord, which are the main parts of the central nervous system. And how are they protected? We know that they are protected by the meninges, but we'll get into that later when we talk about what are the meninges. Then you need to know the location, where, and what are the functions of the following parts. In the brain, where is the cerebrum? Where is the cerebellum? The corpus callosum, medulla oblongata, and you must also know what are the main functions of the spinal cord. Then you know you shall have covered the central nervous system. Moving on, the topic also goes to the peripheral nervous system. You must also know the peripheral nervous system. You must know the location and function of the peripheral nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, know the location, which parts are involved, where does it work in the human body, and the functions of the autonomic nervous system. Then you must also know the structure and functioning of a nerve. So how does a nerve look like? How does a human nerve look like? And how does it work? Then you must also cover the nerves. They send and they carry signals to and from all parts of the body. This is what you need to know from the topic as we break it down. And then you must also know the functions of the sensory and the motor neurons. Then you must also know the structure and the functions of the parts of the sensory and the motor neurons using diagrams. Very important. Right. Moving on. You must also be able to know the simple reflex arc. Define what is a reflex action and a reflex arc. We must distinguish between the two. The structure of a reflex arc with functions of each part using the diagrams. The diagram is going to entail or is going to have all of this. Then you must also know the functioning of a simple reflex action, the significance of a reflex action, and also the significance of a synapse. The significance is the importance. Why is it important to have a reflex action? Why is it important to have a synapse? And then the disorders of the central nervous system, you have Alzheimer's diseases and you have multiple sclerosis, then you need to cover those. Then you will do the receptors. However, for today's lesson, we are going to just end at the disorders. Right. This topic amounts to 54 marks of the exam of paper 1. So all in all, together with the receptors, with your eye and your ear. So today we are going to focus on only the nervous system. So what do we want to achieve by today's lesson? At the end of this lesson, you must be able to describe the need for a human nervous system. Then you must be able to describe the structure of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. You must also be able to describe the autonomic and the peripheral nervous system. You must be able to describe the structure and the functioning of the nerve. Then be able to define the simple reflex arc and describe the disorders of the CNS. Then you are going to refer to the examination guideline that we've just spoken about on the previous slide. Right. Now we start with our topic. If you take a look at this picture here, imagine if it was you being chased by that huge lion. What were you going to do? What was your body going to do? Were you going to sleep? Were you going to relax? Or were you going to jump? There are so many things that are happening in this person's body that are responding to what he is getting from the environment. In this case, is the threat of being bitten by a lion. So let's check. In order to survive, all organisms must be able to respond to the environment. We will not be able to survive if we are not interacting with our environment. It is very important for us to be able to interact with what is happening in our environment for us to survive. Then, what happens in your body when you encounter danger? I don't know of anyone who can say, I'm in a dangerous situation, but they sit there. Something must happen. So all of this will be informed by the two systems that we are going to talk about. Right. The humans have two coordinating systems, which will allow them to adapt to changes in the environment and to maintain their internal conditions. The first one is the nervous system. The nervous system will allow you to respond to any imminent danger or any immediate danger that is coming from the external environment or from the environment that is coming from the outside your body. Then there is also an endocrine system that will allow your body to respond to the stimulus that is coming from your internal body or from inside your body. There are so many things that can go wrong inside your body, but you need a system that will enable you to respond appropriately to what is happening to you inside or to what is happening to you outside your body. So these two systems, your nervous system and your endocrine system, are very much important in assisting you to respond to your environment. However, for today, our main focus is on the nervous system. Right, moving on. Coordination. Everything needs to work together. They need to receive the impulses or the messages or electrical messages. Then the body must respond accordingly or in a way that is suited for whatever stimulus or whatever environment is putting the body under. Now, nervous coordination is when all parts of the organisms work together smoothly. Imagine if you are feeling pain, but you cannot respond. So all the systems must work together in a coordination for you to survive, for you to respond accordingly. So coordination is when all the systems are working together smoothly. Every system is transmitting the message to the other one. So we need coordination in our nervous system for us to get the ultimate message and for us to produce the ultimate or the desired response. Right. The nervous system therefore allows humans to react to their surroundings and coordinate their response. We need the nervous system for us to react, for those messages to be coordinated, for us to be able to respond. Now, the stimulus, like we've said on the previous one, can come from inside or it can come from outside your body. Then the cells called the receptors, you can say they receive, right? They receive. They are going to tell our bodies about the changes in the environment. So we find the receptors in the organs, you find them in your skin, your external ones, and you have the internal ones. The receptors are the ones that have the nerves that are going to transmit this impulse to the brain or to the parts where they need to be processed for you to respond. So you need the receptors to receive the stimulus from outside or from inside. So the cells that will receive that stimulus are called the receptors. Right. The signal we receive from the environment is called a stimulus. You might have heard me talking about the stimulus. The stimulus is now the signal that we receive from the environment. And remember, the environment, we said it can be internal environment or it can be external environment. From the internal environment, if something is going wrong, there is going to be a signal, which is our stimulus. It's going to signal our body to say something is going wrong. Then on the outside, when something is going wrong again, your body is going to detect that when you come across or when you are in contact with what is posing danger to your body. Then the stimulus is that particular signal that you get from the environment. If you take a look at these pictures right here, you see this person here is afraid that this bomb is going to explode in front of them. They must act accordingly. If there's a light that is being switched on in a room, you must respond accordingly. If the temperature changes to lower degrees, you must respond accordingly. And so on. When you get injured, when there's fire, all these other external stimuli, your body needs to react accordingly. So the main question is, how? How does your body then take all this information and act accordingly or responds accordingly? That is the main question of the day. So we are going to take a look at that. Now, this is the nervous reaction. This is what I'm talking about. When your nerves are receiving that stimulus by the receptors, they must respond. So how does the whole system work? Let us check. Firstly, there's going to be a stimulus from the environment. Remember, we said stimulus can be internal or it can be external. So once there is a stimulus, the receptors here are going to sense. They are going to sense that there is a stimulus or there is something that is going wrong. And then what are they going to do, these receptors? You find the receptors in your skin, in your muscles, in your organs. They receive the signal or they receive the stimulus from the environment. Then what are they going to do with that stimulus? They are going to send that stimulus to the sensory neuron. Remember, all these messages or the signal, it needs to be converted in messages that the body can interpret, and it works in nerves. Remember, we are talking about the nervous system. So the message needs to be transmitted into impulses. So the receptors are going to convert that stimulus into impulse, and that impulse is going to travel to the sensory neuron. The first neuron that is going to receive from the stimulus is the sensory neuron. I want you to take note of this word. When you do not understand a word, please break it down for it to make sense to you. Right, so we are talking about the sensory neuron. What is to sense? To sense, you can say, is to feel in simpler terms. So when you sense in something, it means the sensory neuron is sensing the stimulus from the receptors. Now, it is the first neuron that is going to receive the stimulus. Then after receiving the stimulus or the impulses, it is going to transport those impulses to the central nervous system. That is where everything is processed. We are going to talk about the central nervous system later, and then you will see when I say that is where everything is processed. Right, we need the message to ultimately or to reach the nervous system at the end. Right, so the sensory neuron will send that impulse to the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the part that consists of the brain and the spinal cord. That is your central nervous system. This is where this message is going to be interpreted. Then, after this message is interpreted, it is now going to be sent to the motor neuron. The motor neuron is where now you are going to feel again the effect, the danger now. So the motor neuron can also include the muscles, examples, or the organs internally. So the motor neuron then will transmit to the effector. Effector is where you are going to feel the effect of that danger. If it was fire, if it was something, if it was a nail, you stepped on a nail with your bare foot, you were walking without shoes, then you step on a nail. That information needs to go from the receptors to the sensory neuron to the brain or the spinal cord, which is the central nervous system, and then to the motor neuron, from the motor neuron back to your skin where you are going to feel pain. And then you are going to do what? To remove your foot, because your foot is now doing what? Is feeling the pain. So you are going to respond accordingly to that stimulus which was posing danger to you. Just take 2-3 seconds to process this information. This is how your nervous system is going to respond to any external stimulus or internal stimulus. 1, there's going to be a stimulus here. I'm back here again. 2, that stimulus is going to be sent to the receptors. The receptors are going to send that stimulus to the sensory neurons now as impulses. Now, okay, let me write impulse here so that you can remember. Then those impulses are going to be sent to the brain or the spinal cord, which is the central nervous system. And then this central nervous system is going to send that message back again to the motor neuron. These are the 2 types of neuron that you need to take note of. Very important. So let me just write NB here, because we are going to talk about these 2 types of neurons, 1 and 2. So the motor neuron will therefore send that to the effector. Then from the effector, it is going to be sent to, you are going to respond accordingly. I think by now you all understand how the nervous reaction works. So it has many functions. Let's just look at the functions of the nervous system as a whole. So the nervous system in vertebrates performs 5 main functions. We've spoken about those functions, but without mentioning them one by one. So now let's look at them one by one. What is the main function? The first one, it is to gather information using the sense organs. So all your sense organs in the body. You did the sense organs when you were still in primary school. You remember? Those sense organs, you use them to gather information. So the nervous system uses the sense organs to get the information from the environment. 2, it is going to transmit this information to the processing areas of the brain. So the nervous system is going to do what? To take this information that you are receiving from the external environment or from the internal environment, the sensory organs. It is going to do what? To transmit them to the processing areas where all this information needs to be processed. Mainly is the brain, but not all. Sometimes it's just to the spinal cord, but we will get to that later to see which information goes to the spinal cord only, which one goes to the brain and the spinal cord. Right. The third one, the main function of the nervous system is to process that information that was gathered. Then the fourth one is to formulate responses to the stimuli. You cannot just get information and not do anything about it. So the nervous system is going to get all this information from the outside environment. It is going to process it. It's going to send it to the processing areas in the brain. And then it is also therefore going to cause you to respond. So we've spoken about this, although we were not formulating them this way. Then number 5. It is the main function. It is to send information back through the network of effector organs to execute that response. So it must be also coordinated together with the effectors, where you are going to now feel it and then respond accordingly. So these are the main 5 reasons why we need to have a nervous system, or the main functions. I hope you have covered that. Now, everyone, wherever you are seated, you know why you need to have a nervous system to survive. Now, the nervous system is divided into 2. So you find here's the main one, the main nervous system, divided into 1, which is the central nervous system, or we can refer to it from now on as the CNS. Then it is divided into the second part, which is the peripheral nervous system, which we can refer to it as PNS, peripheral nervous system. But for now, we are going to focus on the central nervous system. Where do you find this central nervous system? Remember, in the exam guideline, it said you needed to know the location of the CNS. So the central nervous system is located in the brain and the spinal cord. The word central must tell you something. Something that is central is what? It's something that is in the middle. It is central. So when you take a look at this diagram over here, the one that I'm going to circle right now, it shows you the brain and the spinal cord. The brain and the spinal cord are the central main nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord only those 2 parts. Then we will come to the peripheral nervous system later on. Let us unpack the brain and the spinal cord. Right. So this is a diagram. I hope most of you are familiar with this. You have this. This is helping you to hear me, to see me, to respond to what I'm saying, to also learn for the exam what you need to learn, what I'm teaching now. So this is the external part of the brain. You need to pay attention to the parts. Very important. There are lots and lots of pictures of the brain from the internet, from other sources and what. Please focus only on the brain that shows you the parts that you need to study from the exam guideline. Do not confuse yourself with brains from other resources or from the internet. Only focus on the brain that your teacher gave you and the brain that we are talking about today, and the parts that we'll only be talking about as stipulated in the exam guideline. Firstly, on the external, the largest part of the brain is going to be your cerebrum. There is a way in which we can say these parts because we have cerebellum. You see, these 2 words can be confusing to you as learners. Now, how can you differentiate between this? The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. So when you do this on your head, this is the largest part of the brain. It is the cerebrum. How can you remember it? Its name is shorter than the other one. The other one that starts with a C, the name is longer. However, the part is small. So let us take a look at it. So you have the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain. And then here at the bottom, just a little bit when you go down, you have the cerebellum. Cerebellum, you can hear the name is a bit longer. but it is the name of that part which is a bit smaller. And when you cut it transversely, or when you cut it in half, it will look like a tree, but it is just at the bottom. So the small one has a long name. The large one has a short name. That's how you can remember them. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. The cerebellum is the one that you find just below the brain, and it is a small one. Then you have the meninges. Meninges are our membranes. This is another word for meninges is membranes. What are the membranes? The brain is covered by membranes. You cannot see them clearly here, but there are 3 membranes covering the brain, which are the yes. Let us not confuse with the names. The arachnoid, the pia mater, and the dura mater. Those are the 3 membranes that are covering the brain, but you don't need to know the names. Don't worry about those. Those are just know that the brain is protected by the membranes and the cerebrospinal fluid. Then you have the giri and the sulci. You see that the brain is not very smooth. Ne? There are parts that are interwoven. So some parts are high, which will represent your giri, and then your sulci will be those ones that are going in. So your brain goes in and out, and is interwoven like that. And then here, just at the bottom, you find the brainstem. The brainstem consists of the pons viroli and also the medulla oblongata. Right. So medulla with double L there. Medulla oblongata. And then when it extends like this, it goes further. This is where you are going to find your spinal cord. There are 2 things that I would like to clear here. We know when we are watching TV, characters from TV will say, I'm using my medulla oblongata to think, or my medulla oblongata is not working. You must be able to know the functions of these different parts. The function of the medulla oblongata is not to think, is not to process any thoughts or anything. It helps in breathing and involuntary actions, but we will get to the functions on the next slide. But please just note that as a life sciences learner, you are no longer going to allow your uncle to say that they are using their medulla oblongata to think, because that is no longer the case, and you will also be revising with your uncle there. Then the spinal cord. Some people will say, I have an injury on my spinal cord, when they actually mean that they have some injury or pains on the bones surrounding the spinal cord, which are your vertebral column. So as a life sciences learner, you know that a cord, this word, a cord, what does it mean? It means a cord like this, like a cord, a kettle cord, or a computer cord for the charger, a cord. So a spinal cord is a cord. If you can move it, when you eat your chicken there at home, sometimes you eat the bone that has the vertebral bones. Then there is that wide part that you move from that bone. What is that part? That is your spinal cord. The spinal cord is not the whole thing, the vertebral column going down your back. I hope those 2 misconceptions have been cleared. Now you know you are very woke as a life sciences learner. Right. Now we're going to look at the functions of the different parts of the brain. By now, all of you are seated there, you have brains, right? So, do you know which parts of your brain are responsible for what function? So, you must be able to do that. You must be able to know that. Let us take a look at the first part, which is the largest part of the brain. We said is the cerebrum. The cerebrum, it is responsible for voluntary actions such as sensations and higher thought processes, your emotions, your thinking, your learning. Now as you are learning, the part of the brain that is stimulated now is the cerebrum. So you are learning with your cerebrum. And whatever that you do, you are raising your hand, you are standing up, you are running, you are doing things voluntarily. That is controlled by the cerebrum. So at least now you know. Okay, when I'm doing this, I know which part is involved. Then you come to the cerebellum. Remember we said the cerebellum is here. We said when you cut it, this is a structure of the brain, but it is cut in half. So remember when you cut it, I said it is going to look like a tree. So you see here, it looks like a leaf of a tree of some sort, or a tree itself. Right. So what does the cerebellum do, or what does it help you to do? The cerebellum is responsible for coordination and balance. When you are driving, you are walking, you are not falling. You are able to walk upright and go and run without falling, and your legs are coming left, right. You are coordinating your movements, you are doing. This is the part that is responsible. You are going to talk about this part again, the cerebellum, when you are doing the human ear, because another function of the human ear is to help you with balance. So you must check. This one is responsible for coordination and balance and muscle tone. So it keeps you strong and firm. I hope now you see the differences in these two parts. The other one, voluntary actions, sensations, higher thought processes. The cerebellum, coordination, balance, and muscle tone. Then you come to the medulla oblongata. Oh, remember, we just spoken about our uncle here. Our uncle can no longer say that they use the medulla oblongata to think. What do they use the medulla oblongata for? For breathing, for peristalsis. Remember when you were in grade 11, you learned about how food goes down the esophagus, that movement of peristalsis when the esophagus is constricting and relaxing. That is peristalsis. Your heartbeat, you cannot control your heartbeat. It is controlled by the medulla oblongata. Swallowing, blinking, coughing, etc. These are involuntary actions. If you check, all of these are a bit involuntary. You do not control whether you want to do it or not. When there's something happening, you will cough. When there's something happens or comes, you will blink without even thinking about it. So your medulla oblongata is responsible for that. If you forget, please just remember this. Medulla oblongata, breathing, heartbeat. Then you will know that it is involuntary. And then it also transmits impulses from the spinal cord to the brain. So because the medulla oblongata is situated just above the spinal cord here. This is the medulla oblongata. This is your spinal cord. It is going to transmit what? Impulses from the spinal cord to the brain, to the rest of the brain here. So that is another function of the medulla oblongata. Then you come to the pituitary gland. I would prefer for you to call it the pituitary gland because it has another name. Another name for the pituitary gland is called the hypophysis. But let us use the pituitary gland because there is another word above here, which is the hypothalamus, just to avoid the confusion. This is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, you see where the blue arrow is going just here. The pituitary gland is one that looks like that smaller nyana tongue there at the back of your mouth. But it is not there. This is in the brain. It looks like the glottis. It looks like the glottis, but it is not the glottis. This one is the pituitary gland. And this pituitary gland forms part of the endocrine gland. Its main function is to secrete hormones. We will talk about the pituitary gland much more later when we are doing the endocrine system to see which hormones are being secreted by the pituitary gland and where do they work or how do they function. Then you come to the other organ, which is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is here. This one is the control center for hunger. Now, you can just go and flex. Just show them that you know life sciences. When you are hungry, just don't say, no, I'm hungry. Use these terms to to incorporate what you've learned in class with your daily life. Tell them that, you know what, my hypothalamus is telling me that I'm hungry now. Then in that way, you will never ever forget the function of the hypothalamus. You see, make life sciences to be lively. Live it in your own lives. Tell your parents about it. It's going to be very nice. And you can tell your fellow students who are doing other subjects about this. So this hypothalamus is responsible, or it is the control center for hunger, for thirst, for sleep, for body temperature, and emotions. Now, you are going to talk about body temperature later on when you are doing thermoregulation and homeostasis. You must remember this part, because this is the very same part that we will be talking about and checking how does it work to manage or to bring your body temperature down or to bring it up accordingly. So hypothalamus, it is the control center for hunger, for thirst, for sleep when you are tired. When you are feeling cold or warm, remember, what is telling your body is the hypothalamus. I hope you are going to remember that. Then, the last part that we have not explored is the corpus callosum. Now, if you take a look at here where I'm drawing, the red here, that is your corpus callosum. What does the corpus callosum do? This part joins the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. So if you take your brain and then you cut it in half, these two hemispheres, these are the two hemispheres. The two hemispheres are joined together by the corpus callosum. I hope you will not forget that one. Yes. So all in all, these are the main important parts that the exam guideline says you need to study on the brain. I hope everyone is now very happy with their own brains, right? Right. So now we're going to start with the question. Fortunately for you, I've given you a bonus for number 1. Right, so I would like for you to answer this activity for, let's give it 3 minutes. So please go through this activity for 3 minutes with your teacher. Right. I hope you are happy with the bonus that you received. But even without the bonus, I hope you were able to see the parts. So for number 1, it says, give the names of the parts labeled A to C. So you need to go to your diagram there and check. What is A? So if you take a look at this A here, A is a cerebrum. So did you all get it right? I hope you got it right. Then B. Remember that part that we've just spoken about? B is this part which represents what? The corpus callosum, correct? And then C, you come to C. Remember we said it looks like a tree. Just at the bottom there, this part here. What is it? It is the cerebellum. I hope you all got that 3 except for it being a bonus. Then number 2. Give the letter and the name of the parts responsible for A. Coordinating all voluntary movements. Which one or of these letters is responsible for coordinating voluntary movements? Right? That is your cerebellum. This one. The cerebellum. Right. And then, because it is responsible for balance, remember. Then for memorizing, if you are going to memorize a cell phone number, my cell phone number, your friend's cell phone number, which part of the brain are you going to use? Remember, thought process. The cerebrum, the largest part of the brain, which is A. And please take note, when the question says give a letter and a name, you must do so. Because then if you give only a letter and not a name, you are going to lose marks. If you check here, it says 2 marks. Mark allocation is very important. It will guide you as to how much you need to write for that answer. Right, so you see A, there's a mark for that, and then cerebrum, there's also a mark for that. I just needed to make you aware of that. Then explain 2 functions of parts E. Let us go take a look. What is part E? Now, here is part E. Part E is your medulla oblongata. So this is going to be your medulla. Oh, can I please just write O? Medulla oblongata. What does the medulla oblongata do? It controls breathing. We've spoken about this. Peristalsis, heartbeat, and swallowing. And also, it transmits impulses from the spinal cord. This is the spinal cord. From the spinal cord to the brain. Remember, if impulses are coming through this way, they're going to go to the brain. How do they get to the brain? Through the medulla oblongata, because this here will be your spinal cord. Right, so that is the second function. The second function is that it transmits impulses from the spinal cord to the brain. Then also it controls less important reflexes such as blinking, coughing, and sneezing. Those come and go. They are not that much important, but they are also controlled by the medulla oblongata. I hope for this question you are ready for the exam. Then also for vasodilation, vasoconstriction, and salivating. Vasodilation is when your blood vessels are becoming more open. Vasoconstriction, when your blood vessels are becoming less open, they are becoming closed. When they are closing like that, it is called vasoconstriction. So these are just additional functions of the medulla oblongata. Then let us take a look at F. So F is right here. Remember we spoke about F here. What is F? F, it controls the center for things such as hunger, thirst, and sleep. So your F is going to be your hypothalamus. Right. And then just below the hypothalamus here, just where I'm drawing the circle, remember we spoke about this part, we said is what? The pituitary gland. So, but we are not talking about that for now. Let us look at the hypothalamus. We say it is a control center for things such as hunger, thirst, and sleep. And it also controls the temperature and emotions. So that is how you get your 2 marks. So any of those two, if you've written them, good for you. Right. Moving on with the questions. Number 4. Provide 2 ways in which part D is protected. We come part D. Part D is your spinal cord. Okay. I've already mentioned that from the previous slide, but I hope you got it also. This is the spinal cord because now it is just below the medulla oblongata. So how is the spinal cord protected? Just like your brain, just like your brain. Let us see. The spinal cord is protected by the vertebrae with cartilage. Remember the bones that we've spoken about to say those are not the spinal cord. They are the bones that are protecting the spinal cord inside, like this. So it is protected by the vertebral column or by the vertebrae with cartilage in between. Remember, between each disc of the vertebrae, there is cartilage in between. So that cartilage, together with the bones, are protecting the spinal cord. But that is not the only way it is protected, because those discs can absorb shock. If you bend, if you do something, it will then absorb whatever shock so that it does not go straight to the spinal cord. Then it is also protected by the membranes called meninges. Remember, we've spoken about the meninges here when we said the brain is protected by the meninges. Then the spinal cord is also protected by this, the cerebrospinal fluid. You can break this word into 2. Cerebro means what? Of the cerebrum, of the cerebellum. You see? Spinal fluid. So the cerebrospinal fluid is the fluid that we find protecting the spinal cord, just to give it that cushion. Then these are the 3 ways in which the spinal cord is protected. Just to go through them again, the spinal cord is protected by the vertebrae with cartilage. 2, it is protected by the membranes called the meninges. 3, it is protected by the cerebrospinal fluid. Then, which functions of the body might be affected if the lower back part of the head receives a significant impact in a car accident? These questions means that which functions of the body are going to be affected if the lower back, so the lower back, you must think something somewhere around here, is badly injured. Let's say badly injured in an accident. So think about it. What can happen to this person? Right? Let us take a look at the answer. So the medulla oblongata will be affected because this is the lower part. So we can just say the lower part is all of this. So the medulla oblongata will be affected. And remember what the medulla oblongata is responsible for. Once the medulla oblongata is affected, what is going to happen? This could lead to problems with breathing, number 1. The person might face challenges with breathing because the medulla oblongata is responsible for breathing. Now, in an accident, the medulla oblongata is affected. Therefore, the person might have challenges with breathing. They might have challenges with their heartbeat. They might have challenges with their digestion. Remember peristalsis. They might also, the communication between the brain and the spinal cord might also be affected because remember that communication from the spinal cord passes through the medulla to the brain. So if the medulla is affected or is injured, then that communication might also be affected. Right. I think we are done with the brain. Where you are seated right now, you must be very confident now about the brain, that you will be confident to answer any questions that you find on the brain. Right. Now we come to the spinal cord. Remember, we are still busy with the central nervous system. The central nervous system. We said the central nervous system consists of the brain. No. Okay. The brain and the spinal cord. Right. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. So we have done the brain. Now we are coming to the spinal cord. This is a diagram of a spinal cord. How does a spinal cord look? Or what parts does it have? The spinal cord is the pathway for all impulses conducted from the receptors to the brain and from the brain to the effectors. So everything that comes through the receptors is going to pass through the spinal cord to the brain, and then from the spinal cord to the effectors. Still, so you see, it is a way, it is a pathway where all these impulses are going to pass. For you to receive the stimulus, it will pass through the spinal cord. For you to respond, that message needs to be passed from the spinal cord to the motor neurons, to your effectors, where you're going to feel the effect. So you see, the spinal cord in that way is a pathway. It's a pathway. Right. And then the spinal cord has a gray matter which lies inside the shape, in the shape of an H. So if you see here, in the middle, you find something that looks like an H. That is the gray matter of the spinal cord. Then, the white matter lies on the outside of the gray matter. So here, this is your white matter. So you see here is your white matter, and then here is your gray matter. So the H forms the gray matter, and then surrounding the H is white matter. And then you have the spinal nerves. There are nerves leaving and entering the spinal cord. So they leave and enter through the dorsal root. Dorsal, you can call it the upper. The upper root, the ventral root, or you can call it the lower. You can call it the lower root. So the lower or the ventral root of the spinal cord and the dorsal root of the spinal cord, that is where the spinal nerve moves, comes in and out, depending on which cell do they come from the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. But the sensory neuron, remember, is the one that is receiving, and the motor neuron is the one that is sending to the effector for you to respond. Right, so that is the diagram of the spinal cord. So this spinal cord processes all reflex action. When you think of reflex action, reflex, this word reflex here, we will talk extensively about it later. We'll talk more about it later when we go to reflex action and reflex arc. But you must know that the spinal cord is the one that is responsible for the reflex action. So the reflex action, if you don't know what they are, we will explain to you just now what are those. Then, the spinal cord functions automatically and it is not controlled by the will. So you cannot say, no, here is a stimulus, it's coming into the spinal cord, but no, I don't want to process it, or I don't want to feel this. The spinal cord acts in reflex. Reflex is what your body is doing to protect you. So your body will react without your will, without you telling it, without you thinking about it, whether you want to do it or not. So the spinal cord is automatic. So responds automatically. It responds automatically by these two divisions, by the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division, or the sympathetic nerve and the parasympathetic nerves. So these are parts that forms part of the peripheral nervous system, which we did not talk about for now. Remember, we said we will talk about it later. So that is part of the PNS, peripheral nervous system. So this is where now impulses are conducted along the spinal cord to all organs. Right, so I hope now you see the diagram of the spinal cord. You'll be able to draw a spinal cord. You draw an H in the middle, which is your gray matter. And then you can also give it a central canal there. And then you are going to draw surround that gray matter with white matter. And you are going to draw a dorsal root and a ventral root where your spinal nerves are entering and leaving the spinal cord, and on both sides. So on this side here and also on this side. So the roots are leaving from the left hand side and the right hand side. So that is the structure of your spinal cord. Right. So we are done with the central nervous system. We have done the brain, we have done the spinal cord. Now we need to look at the other part of the nervous system. Remember, we said the nervous system consists of two parts. You have the central nervous system, which we are done with. We are done with this one because we did the brain, we did also the spinal cord. But now the nervous system consists of the second part. Remember, this was the first part. This is the second part. The second part is the peripheral nervous system, which is the PNS. Now, the peripheral nervous system, this one. So we are now doing the second one. Is depicted in this picture here. So if you see this picture, is all the nerves that are on the side, leaving your central nervous system to go to all parts of your body. So it goes to all parts of your body, but it is not centralized. Remember, the central one was the brain and the spinal cord. Now everything that is on the side going to the rest of the body is called the peripheral nervous system. Now the peripheral nervous system is divided into two. You have the sensory pathways and the motor pathways. Now the motor pathways will further branch into the somatic or voluntary nervous system, where you are doing things under your will. You decide you are responding in this way. The responses are being transmitted from all parts of the body, processed, and then you act accordingly. Sometimes it's under the will. And then also it is the peripheral nervous system, the motor, is divided into the autonomic or involuntary nervous system. Now on the involuntary nervous system, from the rest of your body, you have the parasympathetic or the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. Now this one is the one that is preparing you for flight or fight. So this one is automatic. Remember that lion that we were seeing from the first slide? The person was running from the lion. If the person had to think about it and process it, well, do you think the person was going to survive being bitten by the lion? So this is the part of the nervous system that is going to kick in. It is going to enable this person to survive by instinctively doing things under the sympathetic division. The body will react very quickly and allow this person to escape being bitten by a lion. We will see later how it works. So this is just a breakdown of the peripheral nervous system. Right, unlike the central nervous system, this one branches. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Remember, brain, spinal cord. But the peripheral branches. Has two pathways, the sensory pathway, motor pathway. Motor pathway branches into two, the voluntary nervous system and involuntary nervous system. The involuntary one, you don't tell it to do it. It happens, but it happens under sympathetic division or parasympathetic division. Let's see how it works. So the peripheral nervous system, if you take a look at this diagram, the red part indicates the central nervous system, but the blue indicates the peripheral, one that is on the side. The blue is the peripheral. Now, the peripheral nervous system consists of the nerves that branch out from the CNS. So you see, they come from the CNS, but they branch out. They are going to all parts of the body. They are branching now. So the peripheral nervous system is the one that where the nerves are coming from the central, but they are branching to different parts of the body, and then they connect it to different parts of the body. Yes, we've already spoken about that. Then the somatic nervous system, it controls actions that are conscious or conscious activities, meaning activities that you do under your will. Conscious, you do them under your will, willingly, you see. And then they also control the skin and the skeletal system. So when you are running, when you are sweating, when you are doing what, those sometimes they can be under somatic nervous system. However, we will talk more about this one. Autonomic nervous system, it is the one that controls those unconscious activities. Can you sit there and tell me that you can control your heartbeat? Let's say your heart. Can you try? Just sit and tell your heart to beat fast or to beat slow under your will. It cannot. So it is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and it is going to respond accordingly based on the stimulus that you are receiving from the environment. So this one you cannot control. It is not under your control. Therefore, that's why we say it is unconscious. Then the visceral and the glands. Viscera are the internal organs. So you can say these are the internal organs, such as your lungs for breathing, your eyes, what. You cannot control some of the things that are happening with those internal organs. So the nervous system that is responsible for that is the autonomic nervous system. However, they still need to respond. So even when they respond, they are responding, but not under your will. That is why we say it's autonomic. Autonomic, this word auto comes from automatic. It happens under, not under your will, unconsciously so. You do not control it. I hope it is clear. Right. So, moving on, remember we said it branches to the motor response. So, how does it happen? Remember that person with the lion, or you being chased by a dog. Let's say there is a dog next door, a pit bull, and it is chasing you, you want to run. You can find yourself having climbed a very tall wall. How are you able to do that? The autonomic nervous system is going to bring changes in your body that will enable you to do things that you cannot even think you are capable of doing. First, let's check what do the divisions. Remember we spoke about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Now the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, they work in opposite. The other one brings the changes that are going to give you so much energy and power and enables you to respond. And then after you have jumped that fence, you've responded by jumping a very high wall or a very high fence. You find yourself on the other side. You cannot stay in that state of heightened response. You need to calm down. The parasympathetic division is the one that is going to help you now to do what? To calm down. It is going to bring your body back to normal so that you can go back and tell the story. So, what are the examples of things that can happen? Okay, we say they are moving in inverted, meaning they are working together when in opposite. Let's say in opposite. So, what happens then when you see that lion or when you see that pit bull chasing you? A pit bull or a dog, just any dog. Some of you, I know you are afraid of any dog. So if that dog is chasing you, your body wants to fight, wants to respond. These are the changes that are going to happen, that are going to be brought by the sympathetic division of your body. Take note of all the parts in your body that are going to play a role in you running away from that dangerous situation. First, your pupil, the pupil of the eye, is this part of the eye here. It's going to dilate. Why should it dilate? It is going to dilate more so that it can take in more light so you can see your surrounding. You can see how high the wall is or how far it is, how much. So it must be wide enough to take in more light so that it can be interpreted as how is your surrounding? Where can you run to? So the pupil will dilate. This is now your body trying to respond to an emergency situation that is dangerous. I've never seen someone who is scared but with small eyes. If you are scared, your eyes are going to be big. They're supposed to be big so that they can take in more light that is going to enable you to see your environment. So first, your sympathetic division allows your pupil to dilate. Number 2, it is going to inhibit salivation. Do you have time to run and then still salivate? I don't think so. You need to run. All the energy and focus needs to go to running. So there's no time for salivating. You cannot say, I'm running for a lion, but I'm craving chicken liquid. No. Or I'm craving pap and milk. No. You are not thinking about that. You are thinking straight about running away from the dog. So it is going to be inhibited. So your body is going to inhibit salivation. Then it is going to also relax your bronchi in your lungs. Remember, you are running fast. As you are running, your muscles need more oxygen. So if you need more oxygen, it means the lungs in your body, they need to be open more. So the bronchi are going to be dilated so they can put in more air with more oxygen that can go to your muscles. Then you can be able to run. So it is going to relax your bronchi. It is also going to accelerate heartbeat. Accelerate is to make it move faster. So your heartbeat is going to pace faster. Remember, now it is processing and transporting oxygenated blood to the lungs, to all parts of the body, to the kidneys, to everywhere, to the muscles. So the heartbeat needs to be faster. So the sympathetic division is going to make your heartbeat faster. And then in your stomach, so this is your heart, your stomach, it is going to inhibit digestive activities. So all those activities, maybe you've just eaten something or you want to eat something, they are going to stop because your body now is in a flight response to say all the energy must be focused on the muscles to help you to run. Therefore, there's no time to digest. Why are we digesting food when we are in danger? So your body will respond in this way, whereby it is going to stop. To inhibit is to stop. It is going to stop all digestive activities. Then, in your liver, it is going to stimulate glucose release. Remember, glucose means energy. Everyone needs energy to run. Can you really run from a dog when you don't have energy? That dog will bite you. So, the liver is going to be stimulated to release that glucose that was stored there to allow you to have energy to run. And then your kidneys, these are the kidneys. Okay, this is the liver. These are the kidneys. They are going to secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine from the kidneys. So this will allow you not to want to go to the bathroom. Right. So you would not think about wanting to go to the bathroom when you are running. Although for some people we know that some accidents happen when they are scared. Then your bladder is going to relax. When your bladder is relaxed, sometimes this is what is going to happen. If these are secreted and your bladder is relaxed, this is the point where you find that when someone is running from a dog, they can urinate on themselves or pee on themselves. It's because their bladder is now relaxed. the sphincter muscles of the bladders are relaxed and then urine can just pass out. And then the rectum will therefore be contracted, meaning you don't need to go to the loo when you are running. So you see all of these actions are taking place. They are well coordinated. Your body is protecting you from one thing, but it needs to coordinate and stop other processes and make other processes to be faster and to be more in order to help you to survive. It goes back to the statement that we started with when we said we need the nervous system to help us to survive. This is how it helps us to survive. So when all of this, the sympathetic division has been done, you have now on the other side, you are on this other side. You are on the other side of the fence. Now you need to calm down. Your body cannot stay in this state forever. This is not a natural state. What must happen? Your pupil must come down. So the parasympathetic division is going to do what? To constrict your pupil. So the opposite. Remember when we said it worked in opposite. The opposite of what was happening when you were trying to protect yourself and respond accordingly now needs to happen. What is the opposite? The opposite is going to bring everything now back to its normal. What is the normal? The pupil now must constrict, must come back to the normal size, become smaller. Salivation is therefore now stimulated. You can even ask for water. And then the heartbeat comes back to normal because you no longer need that much oxygen to go to your lungs. And then the bronchoconstrict stimulates digestive system now activities, and then also stimulates the gallbladder in the liver, also construct the bladder, and then relaxes the rectum. So all of these are just the opposite of what was happening in the sympathetic division. So the parasympathetic, para means it comes down, parasympathetic. But the sympathetic one is the one that was heightened to help you to flight or fight. Right. So I hope you understand how now the peripheral nervous system works together with the autonomic nervous system. Right. And then we come to the nerves. We've spoken about the nervous system, but the nervous system as a whole is a system. But this system comprises of what? The nerves. What are the nerves? So the nerves send and carry signals to and from all parts of the body. So the nerves are the ones that get. So here on my finger, if I get stimulus, the nerves on my finger are the ones that are going to send that stimulus to the rest of the body or to the central nervous system where they are going to be processed and allow me to respond. So the nerves are the ones that are doing the job. And these nerves are made up of neurons. Now, a nerve comprises of nerve fibers. So you see here there are nerve fibers that are held together by the connective tissue. So you see the connective tissue. So these are the fibers held together by the connective tissue. And then one nerve consists of millions of neurons. So the neurons are the smallest unit of nerves. So you can see they come in in a large number, millions and millions of neurons. So nerves are the large ones, but each nerve consists of millions of neurons. So let us take a look at the neurons. So what are these neurons? Neurons are specialized cells which connect the brain and the spinal cord to all other parts of the body. So they are specialized cells of the nerves. So if you take a look at this micrograph here, this is a micrograph of a neuron. So you see there are lots and lots of neurons here. So these neurons are the ones that actually transmit those impulses from the brain to the spinal cord, from the spinal cord to the brain, vice versa. So these are the neurons, millions and millions of them in one nerve. So they are the smallest unit of a nerve. Right. And then we find different types, but the basic structure of a neuron is like this. So each neuron is structured in this way. A neuron has a cell body, it has dendrites, it has an axon. So you need to be able to locate this part in each and every neuron you come across. There are 3 types of neurons that we are going to talk about, which is the motor neuron, the sensory neuron, and the interneuron. But in all of them, you must check where all these parts are, because this is the basic structure of any neuron. So a neuron must have a cell body, it must have dendrites, it must have an axon. Then they will differ in position based on the type of neuron you are talking about. Right. The dendrites always carry impulses to the cell body. So you must trace where the cell body is. So the cell body is going to receive impulses from the dendrites. So, and the axon, also look where the axon is at. The axon always carries the impulses away from the cell body. So if you are confused by the two, look at this. Axon A, axon away, axon away. So axon always carries impulses away from the cell body. But the dendrites, they carry impulses to or towards the cell body. So that is how you can remember the functions of those 2 parts. We must look at the dendrites transmit impulses to the cell body, but the axon, because it starts with an A, it transmits impulses away from the cell body. So both of them, they are interacting with the cell body. Then the cell body controls the metabolism of the cell. So the cell body is the one that is going to control the metabolism of the cell. Right. So let us take a look at neurons. So they have axons and dendrites. Remember, axons carries impulses away. You are going to remember this because it's A and it's A. Away from what? From the cell body. Dendrites carries impulses to the cell body. Then they have a myelin sheath or a fatty layer that is wrapped around them. So the myelin sheath plays a very important part. So if you take a look at this diagram here, so this part that is covering the axon, you see the axon is coming out there, is covered by the myelin sheath. This myelin sheath here plays a very important part. So this will be your dendrites. Then the myelin sheath, what are the functions of the myelin sheath? It's going to act as insulation, shock absorber. It is also going to help speed up the transmission of impulses. So it makes the impulses to move faster. So the myelin sheath helps the impulses to move faster along the axon and the dendrites. So that is the function thereof. Then there are 3 types of neurons that we said we must look at. Right. The first one is the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron is the one that is going to receive, or it is the afferent. With your alphabet, A is the first alphabet. Afferent neurons are the first neurons. So the sensory neurons will always be the first one that will receive the stimulus. When you are drawing your reflex arc, your sensory organs, your sensory neurons are the ones that are going to receive the stimulus first. So your sensory neuron looks like this. How do you know this is a sensory neuron? Check the cell body. The cell body must be on the side. Then the dendrites will be there at the bottom, and the direction is always from the receptor. Remember, I said this one is the one that is going to receive. So this is going to receive impulses from the receptor. Then it has the myelin sheath, cell body is on the side. Sensory, cell body on the side. So sensory, cell body on the side. Then you come to the interneuron. Now interneuron is the one that is found between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. The interneuron, you can say it is in the middle. So it has dendrites there at the top to receive impulses or transmissions or impulses from the sensory. And then the cell body is just right in the middle, right in the center of the axon there. And then you find the dendrites there. So how do you know an interneuron? Interneuron starts with the dendrites, ends with the dendrites. So it's the one that we find in the middle of the sensory and the motor. So its function is to transmit impulses from the sensory to the motor. Right. And then you find the motor neuron, which is the last one. The last one will start with the dendrites to receive the impulses. And then inside the dendrites, check where the cell body is. The cell body is just right in the middle of those dendrites. And then you find another terminal of axon there at the end. So your sensory, remember the cell body is on the side. The interneuron, remember where did we say the cell body was? The cell body was just in the middle. And then this one, the cell body is right inside the dendrites. So that is how you know. This is your last neuron that is going to transmit impulses from the sensory or from the interneuron to the effector, where you are going to feel the effect. When you can say it is the efferent neuron. So those are your 3 types of neurons. Then you can go through this activity with your teacher. Right. Right. There is a question. You can go through this question with your teacher. Please make sure that you are able to identify this type of neuron in the diagram. State one function of part B. Check where part B is. What is part B? And then explain the role of part C in the functioning of the neuron. So your part C will be this part here covering. Part B is this one that is in the middle. And then you have part A as well. Right. And then the question will therefore continue on the next page. You will answer this question with your teacher. Right. These are just the answers. All right. So we don't have an additional activity. Right. So you will go through the reflex action and the reflex arc. Next week, when we meet, we can go through the reflex action and try to check what is the difference. This is very important for the exam guideline because they expect you to know what is a reflex action and what is a reflex arc and what are the differences. The other one is a pathway, the other one is a response. So you must know that when you're talking about an action, is how you respond. But when you're talking about the arc, is the pathway. It's actually how or the direction in which the impulses are going to travel. And please note, when you are talking about these impulses, refrain or stop using the word message. Always talk about impulse. I know it's easier when you explain it to say a message, but you must actually say an impulse. That is the correct way of talking about what is going to be transmitted inside the nerves, because the nerves don't know any message, but they only transmit impulses. When they get them as a stimulus needs to be converted into impulses. Then they are going to be transported in that way. Right. So I think we have come to the end of our session. Please go through the reflex arc and the reflex action, and also go through the types of neurons. Remember, I said you must be able to identify them with reasons. That this is the motor neuron, this is the sensory neuron, this is the interneuron. Right. And then they continue. Right. Please go through also the diseases of the nervous system, Alzheimer's disease and multiple sclerosis. Remember, we spoke about multiple sclerosis. Here it is multiple sclerosis. Those are the two diseases of the nervous system. Then we will start with the other response to the environment. Well, thank you for watching this lesson. See you next time. Goodbye.